Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Research Works podcast. We're here at EACD Galway, Ireland 2026. It has been a phenomenal conference so far. I would have to say I've been hearing terminology like it's Galway, but it's Galway. It's pretty windy about here. And we can see conference delegates running from building to building and really committed to going to the next session. And that just speaks to the value of what's being spoken about here and sharing ideas. And we're just so grateful that you've tuned in today for another episode to allow us to share with you some more information about what's going on here at the conference. And today I have someone that I've admired from afar for quite some time. It's always really nice to meet in person. Welcome to the pod, Jill Massey.
Thank you, Dana. It's so lovely to be here and meet you.
So nice to have you here. It's nice to be in the same time zone, to speak live. And when I saw what you were presenting, I thought we definitely need to speak. It's an area that I know that you're very passionate about. And I have a lot of questions for you. So just for everyone who's listening, the title of this presentation is Helping Children Flourish, Parent-Informed Social Narratives to Support Readiness for Upper Limb Rehabilitation in Cerebral Palsy. I love this so much. I've got my reasons for it, but before I jump in, I wanted to ask you, what got you started onto this topic even in the first place?
Yeah, so I'm here really in this specific context representing work of one of our team members at the time, Laura Merchandani, who really set off on this path in supporting children's readiness. And in parallel, at the time that this project started, I was doing my PhD looking at parent support mechanisms.
Yeah.
But this specifically looked at supporting children in readiness for an upper limb program. So thinking about in the Evelina Reach service, we deliver interventions that are evidence-based for children who have an asymmetric motor presentation, more specifically really targeting unilateral cerebral palsy or hemiplegia, and using interventions such as bimanual therapy, modified constraint, hybrid approaches, or goal-directed training.
Wonderful.
And we know from those interventions, which are delivered in partnership with parents and community therapists through the tertiary hospital, so the specialist children's hospital, but it's really all of those partners that centre around the child to deliver the intervention. So we were focusing very much on the kind of therapists being supported and the parents being supported in that context. And actually we found that it would be really helpful, and we were thinking that we should support the child in readiness for coming for their intervention. So that's how this project sort of came about, really.
That's so great. And it's so, I love, when I read this, it stopped me in my tracks, because a lot of the times, you know, we have this communication with parents, because they're the ones often, you know, maybe communicating with us and scheduling and all that kind of thing. We talk to them and they know it's coming. There's these session dates and times, because they're the people who are organising the child's life. And then the child arrives to the sessions and we're like, here we go. But you've actually gone, we need to make sure the child is ready.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, it seems obvious, but I know there's more reasons for it. Why is that so important from your perspective and what your teams have observed?
Yeah, I think so. They're coming in the context in which we work. We are not able to go home. So we have a model where the children need to come into the clinic for some of their sessions.
Sure.
So we have a model whereby, and that's a service parameter that we need to work with.
Yeah.
We get around that and we work through that with having hybrid sessions. So we have 1 week in the clinic and 1 week where we do it virtually through telehealth, delivered at home. And we have the community therapists that generally go into the home as well in partnership in that program. So we do have home-based intervention and the parents are delivering at home. But it was that piece around coming into the clinic. And families often have to travel. So the clinic's based in London at the Evelina Children's Hospital. So they have to travel up to London quite often. There's a lot of preparation in the day. We wanted to ensure that the child was ready and in an optimum state of readiness and learning to be able to then engage in the programme.
So and make the most of that time that's been actually dedicated to this, hasn't it? Yeah. So how did you go about doing this? Who was involved and the ages of the children? I'm really curious about this.
Yeah. So we have a reference group in the service that is a multi-stakeholder group. So we have parents as well as clinicians, both from community and across the hospital. So we took went to the reference group and said, how can we, what's your experience of supporting your children in kind of coming for these programs? All the parents in the reference group have experience of delivering these programs. They've been through the service.
Sure.
So they identified that it would be helpful to have something to support their child in coming in for the sessions.
Great.
So from there, it was then looking at, okay, so what can we do about that? Mm-hmm. So we looked to the literature, thinking about what other areas do we have in other populations, etc., where we can draw upon. And so social narratives or social stories that were developed by Carol Gray for children with autistic spectrum disorder, autism, was kind of one of the areas that we thought might be helpful.
Wonderful.
So we did a bit of work on that and looking at kind of how that might work, and then went about kind of analysing some of the interviews that we did with parents through thematic analysis. So we used reflexive thematic analysis to look at the themes that were coming out from the interviews and then develop the story from there.
That's fantastic. I love the story of that. I love that it's part of a service. And, we always talk about what's the best practice and where the setting is. And sometimes we need to understand that there are different contexts for different services and settings. And we just need to know how to leverage what is around us to be able to achieve them together, right? I don't think there's a right or a wrong. There's different ways we can do it. But the fact that there's a reference group and you listen to the parents, which is often where the greatest research comes about, and they said, hey, this is what we can look at. I love that you just followed the trail of what they were looking at and producing great qualitative research as a result. So let's talk a little bit about the themes then that came out. What were the main overarching themes? Do you remember them all off by heart? I mean, it's not always the easiest thing to remember them all. I do.
I think so. I do. I think
that's amazing.
But do check them off as we go through. So I think it was kind of when, where, what, when, and why am I going to be playing? So for the child. So those were coming through in terms of from the interviews, thinking about kind of parents saying that, they had to travel. Sometimes that was the burdensome piece. Sometimes it was hard getting ready in the morning, getting prepared. Then we did have experiences where some children were coming to an unfamiliar environment.
Sure.
They'd had that lengthy travel potentially to get there. So how can we prepare them for that? How can we prepare them for what the environment looks like as to where the session would take place, and then also what are so some of the parents were reporting also that they were responding differently in the clinic to at home. And it's okay when the therapist is there, but actually when they're trying to do it at home, some of those things are a bit more challenging perhaps. Sure. So how can we support the parent also in the delivery of those sessions at home? By preparing the child and for them knowing what to expect.
That's great.
And then also the fact that they were going to visit or see their community therapist during the week as well. It's quite a complex model in a way for a child.
They've got many people
who's
involved in this.
So who's involved? Where am I going to be playing? Why am I playing? And when is all of this going to take place? So those were the key themes that came out, and that's really where the story has been generated from.
I want to talk about the stories, but before we get into that, I love the word playing. Isn't all of that? That's obviously very intentional as well. And it's not therapy. Like, it's not where am I going to do my therapy. Can you talk to us through a bit more of that?
Yeah, it's definitely not where am I going to do my therapy. Yeah. So I think, we know that social narratives and social stories need to appeal to the child. They need to be written to support them transitioning to a different context in the first person. And actually, what are they going to be doing when it's not about therapy? We know that play is the way that we engage children. Needs to be motivating, needs to be fun. That's how we're going to get that repetition and practice, which is, we know from the evidence and the literature from this conference and lots of presentations that, the quality of practice and not just the dosage, but also the quality of practice and playing is really important. So it was a very intentional choice. And everything we do in the service is delivered through play, putting the child really at the centre to ensure that actually we're finding the activities that are the just right challenge, that meet the, targeted, bimanual aims that we have for the programme. linked in with families' goals that ensure that actually, but that it's fun.
That's right. You know? I mean, it's a very key factor here. You're going to be working on something that could potentially be hard and challenging, because it is the just right challenge. So there is an aspect here that requires a little bit of resilience to push through and a bit of perseverance. It's got to be fun. It's got to be motivating.
And I think that's also why the readiness piece is so important.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it is going to be tricky at times for them, and you know, hard work, like we say. So the more we can prepare them and enable them to know what to expect and really support that transition, I think that's, you know, it's really helpful. And the parents certainly, when we took this idea as a mechanism for supporting their child in the therapy, they thought in the bimanual programs, they thought that would be really helpful.
That's fantastic. So what age groups were these social narratives written for, especially with the terminology of playing? I imagine that looks different across different age groups.
Yeah, so we originally set out to think about across the age range, but actually there's perhaps a series of stories, but actually when you start off on these projects, you start with these big ideas.
Of course you do, of course.
And then you suddenly think, well, we need to kind of narrow it down. And it's gone through various iterations. And I think we looked at where our primary cohort and primary age range within the service was initially. So when you've got to start somewhere, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's where we started was, okay, where's
we
our
need the
primary?
Just Right challenge as well.
Yeah, we do,
right?
Absolutely. So the Just Right challenge for us was thinking about, in a way, who are our kind of key, where do we have the majority, which age range? And that's really in the preschool cohort. So it's been written with that cohort in mind at the moment. And in the future, we never know, right?
Yeah, and then from there it can evolve. And that's the power of co-design, isn't it? And what comes next in the next challenge.
Yeah.
And this group of children who get the benefit from these social narratives, you know, we'll see what that looks like over the years to come and what's required. And
also they'll grow, right?
They will.
They may be able to inform the next social narratives. You never know.
Exactly. So how are the social narratives then presented? Like, where are you guys up to in the delivery of these?
So with therapists, we're not designers.
No, we're not. We try, but there's people who are better at it than us.
So co-design is definitely my background, but actual kind of the actual drawing and illustration and that of the book, not my background. So there's been lots of iterations of the story, which has been co-created with a parent. So this work was very generously supported by a parent donor who... It's a little bit of a side story, but actually as their wedding, they were getting married, they had a child with hemiplegia, and they requested donations for the service as their wedding gifts.
Goodness.
So it was intentional and important to us that we did something that reflected their generous donation and their priorities as well. So they've been involved, very heavily involved in the co-creation of this work, as well as the reference group. So we have had various iterations of this story, but it takes a look at how the child is coming in from their home to London. So we've got some nice scenes of London in the book.
Beautiful.
Drawn by an illustrator and a design company as well. So we've actually engaged a commercial designer and takes the child through their journey into London, getting ready, coming on the train, you know, and incorporates their goals for bimanual therapy program into kind of their aspirations for wanting to be able to do that by the end, but also how their community therapist comes and works with them at home, and also that they're going to be doing some sessions at home with family delivered by caregivers. So kind of reflecting the partnership model from the service into the story, but also ensuring that we have the goals, which are obviously core to the intervention. So we're very much targeting the child and family goals. And then what the activities might look like, the types of toys that they might use, etc. But also when they're coming into the clinic, what that clinic environment looks like, what it's called.
Yeah, it's very site-specific, very much designed for your service. Yeah. But, you know, I was just thinking about even the preparation for us to travel to a conference. You know, we benefit from that. We want to know what's to happen, where do we meet people, what's it going to look like, and and there's just such value in this. What do you think about how this can be translated into other settings? There'll be people who are hearing about this going, oh, that sounds really good for what we're trying to do. What advice do you have to give them about this whole process?
I would stay intentional to the aims of the project and the request and the parent what parents are asking for. So for me, that's always core to what we're doing and supporting the child. I think the story that we have created, whilst it is very much around kind of the specific context that we work in, actually you could very easily take kind of sentences out like the key words around location and actually put your context in. So particularly if you were another London-based service, for example, all of the drawings would still be relevant and you could just switch out so that would be a very easy kind of switch and fix. I think also ensuring that we are following the kind of social narrative, social story method, if you like, or to create that. And having parents' voices involved in that work to do that iterative co-design process is, really important. So you remain on topic and on target with what they are seeking.
That's right. And I think that's such an important piece of it. We might have the knowledge about what it's actually looking like, but parents have their way of how they might describe that to their children, and that language is important.
And I think the other thing is how is this book to be used, right? So, like all of our research, I'm very much in favour of kind of knowledge translation and ensuring that these things are actually put into practice. So not just sitting on a shelf.
Absolutely,
So, we would anticipate that we're sharing this booklet with families when they're identified as being coming in for a program with the service, and to perhaps use it in some form of interactive reading type mechanism, so that they're actually going through the story with their child, their child's being able to identify the places and the names of the people and, the activities that they might do in exchange for the ones who are identified in it. So it's a living resource,
And in terms of the delivery of this book, it's a hard copy book that gets sent out to them, or is there digital versions of it? What's the plan?
So the plan is, because at the moment we do have a fully formed, we have a almost fully formed version. It's in its kind of iterative stages of design at the moment. The plan is to have some printed copies, and in later stages to have it as a digital resource potentially linked to the service website. So that's a piece that we haven't got to just yet, but we're waiting for the final versions from the illustrators, etc. One of the challenges has been how to reflect in the illustrations a child with hemiplegia.
Right.
So, how to draw that character and that, so that's been an interesting, there's always these little challenges that come about, and how to do that intentionally.
Yeah, that's right.
And meaningfully.
Yeah.
So,
and what have the parents contributed to that in terms of what that could look like?
Yeah, so through some of my other research with parents, I developed a guide to understanding hemiplegia, which also had illustrations and drawings of children with hemiplegia in them. And actually, we can draw upon some of their perspectives from that as well, in that they were very keen to ensure that the child reflected in the drawings actually had postures that reflected those of children with hemiplegia.
Wow.
And that's been a similar theme that's come out in the Social Narratives project as well, is ensuring that whilst we're not overstating it, it's a very subtle kind of balance to strike, I think, to ensure that we're intentionally reflecting that. So we've had to work quite carefully with the illustrator to because they don't have any experience of this. So
of course they don't. And this is why it's so important to work together on this. And there's so many things to think about. It's not about just slapping together some stories in a book. There is so much thought and intent behind it, and there's, for it to be truly effective the way you intend it to be, it does need to go through the process. Like you can't skip this, can you?
No, not and do it with intention.
That's right. Right. Yeah. Jill, I've loved speaking with you about this today. I really, like in my mind, I'm thinking of all the possibilities and things that we could be thinking about and how we can better prepare our children when they are, making the time to come to an appointment or to a session. And you're right, it's about being ready in that moment and supporting them to learn, to make the most of that time. Jill, I've been asking everyone this question because it's a very F words based conference. I'm wondering, what would your advice be for clinicians and therapists if they want to implement more of the F words into their practice? What would that be from you?
So I'm going to reflect on one of the comments from the keynotes, actually, in the questions that were asked. And one of the parents, I think the question, if I recall it, was around how do we share the F words with families? And I think a response from the parent actually on stage said, well, the F words are more a framework for clinicians to use rather than necessarily intentionally sharing them. Families don't have to work through them as a framework. Yeah. These are for us to guide, our practice. Sure. Based on, they were based on the ICF originally. And, so thinking about how do we ensure that we are using the F words within practice, but not necessarily having to tick them off, if you like, with a family. Yeah. So I think for me, that's something that is really important for us to take away. And when a parent says, actually, they're perhaps not necessarily that you don't actually have to go through them with us as parents, that's really powerful to me as somebody who really tries to intentionally listen to parents and their perspectives. So
that's great. I love that reflection because the last thing you want is to basically shove it down their throats. That's not what we're wanting to do here, and it's not a checklist. No. It really is a way of framing it on our perspective to make sure that we are evidence-based, family-centred, person-centred. Yeah,
and if we think about the Social Narratives Project, we've talked about fun, we've talked about family, so I think those are key aspects as well. Yeah. So I haven't mentioned F words when we've been talking about social narratives, but actually they're in there, and they're woven into everything. So it's about being aware of them, utilising them, but not necessarily having to name them and tick them off in a way. So
Beautiful advice, Jill. Thank you so much for being on the pod. It was lovely chatting with you today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. To all of our listeners, I hope you really enjoyed that. I think there's so much food for thought there. I'm certainly pondering about some of these ideas and what we can use, and what a great piece of advice and wisdom that comes from families that, in terms of how we can use the F words as well. So thank you for tuning in. There's so much more to come, of course. Hope you've been enjoying the series, and stay tuned for so much more. But I'll talk to you all again really soon. Bye.